Hello and welcome to this edition of Money's Best Friend with me, Vivek Law. A good financial plan is a roadmap to a stable future. It is also something that needs time and discipline. For a few weeks now, we've been flooded with emails and calls from our viewers on how to save for marriage, for children's education, for retirement, what to invest in, what not to invest in. On this edition of Money's Best Friend, we take up as many of your queries as we can on financial planning. The first step to having a financial plan is recognizing that you urgently need one. Nobody wants to squander away their hard-earned money, and that's why you need a plan for your money. Joining me now is one of India's best-known financial planners, Lovai Navlakhi from Bangalore. Thanks very much, Lovai, for coming by here on Money's Best Friend. Financial planning tends to, as a word, scare people. They think it's something very complicated, it's rocket science. Actually, it isn't. What are the 2 or 3 steps, or simple steps, that can actually be put into place and get started in the journey to managing one's money?
Yeah, so Vivek, your question is very apt, that financial planning is a journey, and if you think of a journey, you do plan for one. Whenever you're taking a holiday, you're planning to go to attend somebody's marriage and so on and so forth. And financial planning is just that. You need to know where do you want to go, why do you want to go there, when do you want to get there, and how much it's going to cost. So as you can see that, out of the 4 questions that I asked, only one of those questions actually pertain to money. The other is more to do with your dreams and aspirations. And financial planning is just a tool by which you can get some guidance as to what are the steps you need to take to help you get to your destination. And unless you know where you want to go, how will you know you reached? So I think financial planning very, very important.
So it's a small part of life planning is what I hear you say, that first figure out what you want out of life, because many of us think that there is one size fits all when it comes to financial planning, and that's not true, because no 2 lives are the same, and therefore no 2 financial plans may necessarily be the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I do not think that financial plans can be sort of similar for 2 different people, probably with the same age group, same size of family, and so on and so forth, because your experiences may be different of the past, and therefore you have some biases or some I don't want to touch something. And 2, your goals and aspirations may be quite different. So I think it's extremely important for you to have a financial plan and for you to take the first steps to get to where you really want to go. So it is absolutely to do with your dreams and aspirations, because money is only a tool and a method to help you get there.
Lots of questions, Lovai, as I mentioned, which have come in for you. So let's head straight across. First up, Somina Jain from New Delhi joining me. Hi, Somina.
Hello, sir.
How are you? Tell me a little about yourself.
Yeah, I am a working person. I am a professional. So I just want to save around 20 lakhs for the higher education of my son.
Okay.
And around 50 lakhs for my retirement.
Okay. How old is your son?
He's 10 years old.
Okay. And how much are you able to save every month?
Yeah, it's 12,000 per month in a SIP as a SIP.
Okay.
15,000 per month as under life insurance premium. And 45,000 per year under the Jeevan Anand policy of LIC. And I also have a health insurance of 5 lakhs.
Okay.
So please advise me, will we be able to meet our goals?
Do you have scope for increasing your investment a little bit more, or are you pretty much tight?
And we are thinking of 10,000 more.
10,000 more is something that you can put in. Okay.
Yeah.
Lovai, very clear goal here. We were talking about goals. Very clear goal. Education for her 10-year-old son. She has a certain target in mind. Is her target all right? And is she on the right track?
Yeah, so first and foremost on education, we need to understand where that amount came from, that 20 lakh of rupees that you need. And I think that the most important thing people tend to forget is that that money, let's say you want for his undergraduation or his post-graduation, is going to be over a 3-year, 4-year period. So you don't necessarily want all the money available upfront at the start of that period. You want it sort of staggered, number one. Number two, you have to keep in mind that whatever the education cost is today, you should at least assume an inflation of 10% per annum, and in some cases it could be higher. In case you're thinking of an overseas education, for sure you have to consider the currency risk, and those could be significant. So that's the first sort of step. For a minute, assuming that 20 lakh is the amount that they need at the age of 18 at today's value, then on an inflated basis, if you're putting aside that 12,000 rupees a month and it can earn say 12% per annum, then you will get to a corpus of about 38 lakhs, which is very close to the inflated amount of 20 lakhs 8 years from now. So to that extent, it does seem possible to meet that education goal. But like I said, very important to understand how that is arrived, for what purpose it is. Is it India? Is it abroad? Is it, 5 lakh per year is what I need over the next 4 years after he's 18. So a lot of that will help in arriving at a little better plan for that investment.
She's also talked about, Lovai, 50 lakh towards the retirement goal of her husband and her. And is willing to put in another 10,000. She's already putting in 12,000 every month into an SIP. We just heard her saying she's willing to take away another 10,000 from her expenses and put aside. If she was able to do that and continue to do that for the next 8 years, then the 12 plus 10, do you think that would combine enough to help them meet their goals?
So for retirement, for a minute, assuming that, so first and foremost, that 12,000 is going towards the son's education, so it's not available for retirement. So that's a clear sort of pocket, and we can obviously rework and say what's of greater priority. For the son's education, you may be able to take a loan. For retirement, you might not be able to. So you might want to tweak that number a bit as you do the working. But I think the question is that if retirement is 8 years later, you have to keep in mind that for retirement, possibly the most critical thing to keep in mind is what's life expectancy. And that is only increasing over time. So if she was to actually say that I'm going to get or create a corpus of 50 lakh, which I will get at retirement, then my rough calculation is that if, let's say, a monthly requirement is say 30,000 rupees a month, then that money will last her for 15 years. If that requirement is say 15,000 rupees a month, it probably will last her 25 years or so after retirement. So that's, I think, one very, very important factor to keep in mind. The other thing is to do that calculation correct. Second thing is to look at different avenues to help to get to that goal. So she did mention that she has an LIC policy, looks like an endowment policy with the amount of premium that she's paying. So obviously she'll get back that money, that 50 lakhs plus the bonus at whatever time it matures. And if that is sort of aligned with the same date as retirement, great. She also spoke of a Jeevan Anand policy, which is a whole life type of policy, which is meant more for inheritance and for the future generation. So we have to look at all of these things combined before we arrive and say, is that amount sufficient, not sufficient? I think that's probably the answer to that question.
But at least the 10,000 that she's willing to put in, she should start immediately by putting that 10,000, and perhaps, since she's already got an experience of SIPs, to put it in the same route, and then of course speak to a good financial planner and work out the mathematics that you're talking about.
Yes, I think that it's not only, I'm not only saying SIP, I don't know what other, say, fixed income instruments she has. She's only spoken about the insurance policies, but does she already have a PPF account? Can she invest in NPS? Now, I mean, there are different avenues by which you can create your corpus for retirement.
All right, we now have an email that has come in from Anil James. He's a central government employee from Srinagar. he will be retiring in 2016. He says, I have an option of commuting up to 50% of my pension so as to get a lump sum amount on retirement. What are the pros and cons of taking the lump sum on retirement? How does the government calculate the commuted value? What are the safe avenues for parking retirement benefits other than in bank FDs? Interesting question, Lovai. What would your advice be?
So first and foremost, in terms of, you have an option to say, I'm going to use my entire corpus and get a pension from that corpus. What happens is that in your retirement, the corpus that the pension that you are going to get is going to be taxable. So you have to determine whether or not you fall under a higher tax bracket because you are taking a higher amount of pension, and obviously look at your other sources of income. Maybe you already have some fixed deposits which are running, or you have certain rental income that you are managing to get even in your retirement. So you have to look at that first and foremost. The other part is obviously in terms of the option of commutation, is that do you have a liquidity requirement? So is there a need that if I commute 50% of the pension amount corpus, I have need for say 5% of it or 10% of it, which I will use sort of almost immediately. In terms of options, like typically all financial planners, we will say that don't put everything into the pension, because you are then going to end up choosing one scheme and get into one sort of fixed rate of return, and you can have different options of that pension, whether you want it for life, you want your spouse to be covered, you want a minimum period, etc. So I would take 50% of that money and then look at definitely other options of investment. So he's asked what is the safer option other than bank fixed deposit. The thing is that when you're looking at your retirement, you are possibly looking at 20 years, 25 years or even more. So I would always say that some portion of that money must go into equities or growth asset, because some part of the money is what I'm going to draw only 5 years or 10 years later. So I can take some risk, and certainly that's a good avenue for me to beat inflation. The other option is to look at maybe tax-free bonds and see what is available at that point in time. So I get some returns which is tax-free, and it doesn't, so I get some cash flow, but it's not getting added to my income. So to that extent, there's an advantage. You could look at fixed income mutual funds, but you have to realize that those amounts could go up and down. And if you wanted to have a balance between equity funds and fixed income funds, then you may be able to look at maybe some hybrid funds to take some element of risk, some safety, and try and take a regular dividend option. At this moment it is tax free. So again, you can get some cash flow.
Also with me on the show, well-known financial planner Lovai Navlakhi from Bengaluru. Let's take some more of your questions now. We have Sylvie Kalra on the line with us. Hi Sylvie.
Hello.
Yeah, hi Sylvie.
Hi sir.
This is Vivek here. It's so nice to get a call from you. You're only 24 years old. You've already started investing.
Yes sir, but I had a query.
Yes.
So I wish to at least save 3,000 every month. I earn 24,000 and most of my salary goes into paying my rent and my household expenses. So I want you to tell me how I can plan my money well, how I can save more every month.
Okay. And is this the maximum that you can do? Is there no scope for some saving? I don't know what you mean by household expenses. Does it mean a lot of going out and spending money?
Just like staying away from family and working outside. So you've got to pay your rent, and there are many
Yes.
expenses that you need to handle on your own.
Right.
So how can I plan it well?
Okay. All right. Lovai, we've talked about this in the beginning of the show, but I think this is so amazing, isn't it? Just 24 years old, a very basic question, but such an important question and so relevant for everyone that, before we talk about investing, how about being disciplined or trying to understand how you can spend better and probably take out even a small amount of money out of your expenditure to start investing. So perfect age for her to start. Desire is there, the goal is there, and she has a wonderful question on how can she squeeze out that 3,000 rupees from that 24,000 that she's earning.
Yeah, it's quite amazing that, there are people who come to you and say, I'm already spending so much, so I have only so much to save. But it's a brilliant idea for everyone to think of an investment goal or a saving goal first and then an investment goal, and say this is the amount I definitely need to put aside. So virtually like you pay the rent every month and this is the amount that has to go to rent. If you were able to say this is the amount that has to go to investment and now there is only so much that's available for me to spend, is a great way to start. The other thing that, since you are asking whether, from the other expenditures, is there something that I can do so that 3,000 a month can go up? I think it's important to do a very sort of close budgeting and to see where you are spending that money. And is there a scope for reducing any one of that expenditure? So let's say you go and eat out every weekend. Is there a scope that you can eat out only 3 weekends out of 4, and that one weekend, whatever you're going to spend, if you can put that aside into saving, that will be a start. But otherwise, I don't think you're the type who's, or at least not sounding the type who's going to fritter away her money. So if there's anything which you think you are doing which is a little over the top, so for every level of expenditure, is there a cheaper way of achieving the same sort of satisfaction or freedom or joy in that expenditure? If you can find that, and even if it's a small 5%, 7% reduction from your 21,000 rupees, you may actually manage to squeeze out 500 rupees, 800 rupees a month. And that itself will add tremendously in future because you're just 24. I think the habit of saving, the discipline, is something that most people require first before they have the money to start putting aside. But everyone sort of does the reverse and says, oh, this is the money and rest, let discipline go, without control.
Do you also recommend, Lovai, that especially, and it's nothing to do with age or what stage of life you're in, but perhaps to also maybe for her note down or write down on a daily basis how much she has spent. There are certain fixed charges that she has to bear in any case, the rent, for example.
Right.
But perhaps when you, in a disciplined way, put it down on a piece of paper every day, you probably get to know that, oh my God, how much have I spent and where have I spent? And my second question related is, while she's put a figure of 3,000, as you kind of alluded to that, you don't have to start with 3,000. She doesn't need to give up the basic joys of life in terms of whatever she is spending on. She may even start with 1,000 a month and get started with her investment. She doesn't need to wait to hit 3,000. Would that be another suggestion? That's of course taking into account that she's very disciplined. She's not spending her money wastefully or throwing it away or frittering it away, as you said.
Yeah, so I think when you talk about noting it down, there are different ways people do it. Some people, who are at her age, probably she's very used to a smartphone and maybe some apps, and there'll be apps in which she can record that. But the most classic and old way I've found of people sort of budgeting this is once you know what you are spending on. People actually in the olden days, and I've seen people do that even now, have envelopes, and they put aside that this is the money that I'm going to spend for eating out. This is the money I'm going to spend on fuel. This is the money on transportation. So towards the end of the month, if you realize, oh, I've run out of fuel and I don't have enough money to fill my tank, then I use a bus. And I sort of actually know that that's the maximum I'll spend on transportation. So that's possibly a way. The other part is definitely to look at what is the amount that I can put aside easily and safely into investment. You can start with as low as 500 rupees, but starting is very, very critical and important. I was thinking of one other idea that, sometimes for people like her, when she's living on her own, she will have income coming in on the first of the month, but the expenditure is happening throughout the month. Now, while you're looking at long-term investment is one thing, but there is a option in mutual funds to invest in liquid mutual funds or money market funds. And you can draw on them as and when you wish. Money comes back into your account in 24 hours. And in fact, some mutual funds even have a debit card linked to your liquid fund. So if you are able to say that, okay, there's a certain amount of rent which I have to pay, so that's fine, I pay it off. And I'm now left with, say, 10,000 rupees, which I'm going to spend through the month. 3,000 I might save, but 10,000 is what I will probably end up at the most spending. I put that into a liquid fund on day one as soon as my salary comes in, and I take a debit card against that. And I can actually spend wherever I have to spend on a card, I can use that card and spend it. But while that money is staying there, whether it's for 3 days or 5 days or 20 days, you are earning something which is better than your bank account. And also you're getting into the habit of saving. And plus you will know exactly how much you're spending where, because you will see statements saying 342 rupees withdrawn on 8th of November. And you know, okay, that was for eating out. Or 215 rupees was spent on fuel. So you will have a record, and that could be a good way of also ensuring that you have the discipline of tracking your expenditure and therefore also saving.
All right, Lovaie, thank you very much for coming by here on Money's Best Friend and taking our viewers' queries. It's a pleasure talking to you like always. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, it's time to wrap up this edition of Money's Best Friend. We do hope it has given you enough ideas on how you can plan your finances in a better way. If you have any queries related to equity, mutual funds, insurance, real estate, gold, then do write in to us at moneysbestfriend@aajtak.com. Have a lovely weekend.